Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. Tonight we're joined by our special guest, Joel Smith from Close Racing Supply out in Eldridge, Pennsylvania. Um, what's new and exciting at Wehrs Machine today, Chad?
Oh, just another Monday here. We had some troubles today, so every day is a new adventure. We're air compressor troubles today, so we're actually shut down until tomorrow when they come to fix that.
I see.
That's one problem with being in manufacturing. If you're broke down, that's very aggravating. But tomorrow's a new day, so we'll figure that out. But supposed to go racing last weekend. We were supposed to have Wehrs Machine Night at Fountain City. That got rained out for the second year in a row, so probably not going to schedule any more race nights for Wehrs Machine.
Awesome. Well, Joel, tell us about first tell us about Close Racing and give us some history about you and the company and all that good stuff.
Well, racing has been around for 1 year now. Originally, it was started by a late model racer by the name of Bob Close. That's where the Close name came. I've worked since 2000, 22 years, I guess, and purchased the business from Bob about 8 or 9 years ago. Actually, recently, when I say recently, about 3.5 months ago, moved to a building down the road from our old location on us to have
Does it sound bad for you? Joel.
We're having trouble with your sound and your system. I'm wondering if you wouldn't be better off to log off and log back in.
Or is your cell phone running on your Wi-Fi there with you? And the Monday it continues.
Technology, man. Yeah, it kind of sounds like some Wi-Fi interference or something. Oh, we were good to go up until we actually launched live, and I don't know what happened. Go ahead, like I said, go ahead and log off and then log back on. See if that helps.
Yeah, I know when I'm here, I always shut my phone off. When we first started, we had some issues with that, but
yeah, well, that was the shop's Wi-Fi was really bad.
Okay. So we got a couple questions popping. You see them already?
Yeah, actually. Questions right off the bat. First one, Dan. I asked last time about running the right trailing arm in the top hole on the bird cage and the second hole on the frame chassis. You said you need bar angle, USRA B mod, left rear bar static with driver 22 degrees, right rear bar 13 at 11 degrees. Well, I mean that's plenty of right rear bar angle. I mean, when the racetrack's heavy, you're going to need that bar angle. When the racetrack gets slick, depending on the horsepower that you have, you might not want all that angle in there. So how are we doing, Joel? Can we hear you now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Oh, I got you. All right.
You think we're good now?
Let's explain all that info to us again.
All right. So everybody missed that. So Bob had just asked me give a little info on Close Racing Supply. And CRS has been around for 26 years. Originally, it was started by a late model racer by the name of Bob Close, successful regional racer here around the area. And I started working for him about 2000, which would have been 22 years ago. And then I purchased the business about 8 or 9 years ago. And just about 3.5 months ago, we moved into a new location, large location, on more inventory, hire some more employees, and be able to take care of our customers better. And that's our goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, we got to see it when we had the Race Tech Intro school out there. We got to see the new building. That's quite the facility you have there.
Yeah, it's working out pretty well for us so far.
So tell the customers, and of course, you know, you guys run a lot of UMP type stuff out there, you know, but basically tell everybody what you actually do and where you service. And
you know, we've kind of grown to the point where we take care of customers all over the country, much like you guys do. There's a few things we specialize in. We build a lot of upper controls, some suspension components that we would build, and take care of a lot of my stuff, the UMP mods. Our area's bigger UMP modified stuff than it is IMCA. IMCA is kind of weak in this part of the country. And then, of course, that super late model racer, crate late model, pretty big, 604 crate model late model cars. This area. And then we have a few classes.
We lost one.
we're losing your connection again, Joel.
I don't know why that's happening.
Yeah.
Do you have any other computers on that are Wi-Fi?
Turns.
Yeah, sometimes I know when we used to do this at the shop, we had to shut everything down because the Wi-Fi wasn't good enough. Next question is Ryan Smith running a Wasota. Ryan is running a Wasota modified, and this year we started running a 1/2-inch bump on the right front. I didn't change much of the car besides that, and I had the nose push on me on exit. Does that mean I need less aggressive bump? Well, what that actually is telling you is that the car is over on the bump to the point where the right front's, in answer to your question, yes, I would say you probably need a less aggressive bump, or you need to adjust the car accordingly and take a little bit of left rear traction out of it, because of course with that bump in there, it's putting it to the point where it's gaining more traction. What's your opinion, Chad?
Yeah, that a 1/2-inch bump stop's really hard to tune. You know, if you got too stiff of one there, it's just going to be probably too aggressive. You probably need something pretty soft, like a foam 1/2-inch, if you're going to try and run it. You know, in my opinion, a 1/2-inch bump stop, it's so hard to tune. You'd be better off to just ignore it and not run it, or just run a really hard one at the bottom of the travel and not even engage in it until you're, you know, right there. I'd rely more on the spring rate than I would a tiny little bump like that.
Yeah, you'd almost be better off to run a taller, lot less softer one that would compress more. But that's just my opinion. I, haven't had a tremendous amount of experience running bump stops, and so that's my opinion anyway. Joey says he can hear you all. Okay. Pat, our old buddy Pat, says Bob Close was one of my first customers and a great guy. Bob was a dealer of ours for quite some time. I never actually had the privilege of ever meeting Bob close. I've heard lots of great things about him, um, so that's awesome. How are we doing there, Joel?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, I think.
I turned my so hope that does.
Not doing it. Let's see. Tracy, what's a good load number for a 50-pound left rear spring? You know, it's back to that. It's back to that your own notebook type thing. But an actual good load number that, having a preload of probably 200 pounds with that 50-pound spring is probably pretty good. But that's going to be pretty much coil bound. You got to be careful when you get that soft because, the spring's not going to take a whole lot. And the problem is by the time you preload it to do what it's supposed to do, you're going to coil bind it. Once you coil bind that spring, all of a sudden now it's going to start to unwrap, in which the more it unwraps, the softer it gets. Joey says he needs a few front bumpers. You must have raced this weekend, huh, Joey? I know we shipped out a fair amount of them today. I was looking at all the big boxes that they sent out, and I'm thinking, whoa, people must have raced. Sport mod, switching from a 13-inch to 11-inch right rear. Same spring rate. What's the reasoning, and what does it do to the car? Well, when you go softer on, or when you go shorter on that spring, it's going to change the spring table on that car quite a bit. And what's going to happen is it's going to actually roll to the right rear a whole lot more. Normally, as a rule of thumb, whenever we went to that 11-inch spring, we've had to increase the rate. So, like if you're running a 225, we've had to increase the rate to like a 250. The thing that I'm not a huge fan of that 11-inch spring because it doesn't have a lot of coils. And so that in itself kind of tells me, sometimes I don't know if we get the travel that we would like to get, but that's kind of the rule of thumb. I think I already answered the question on the.
Yeah, I was a double.
Okay. Ryan, this one's for you, Joel. Joel, do you still sell your fiberglass rod body braces and ends to go with them?
Sure do. Yes, in stock.
Okay. Josh, hey guys, thanks for doing this. On a sport mod, the track is pretty rough, and the right front's bottoming out a tad. Should a guy raise the right front a couple turns or maybe stiffen the spring 25 pounds? Probably. I'm not a huge fan of raising the right heights much. I'd probably lean towards trying that stiffer right front spring. In that heavy conditions. The other thing that you could actually do is go with on a rougher type racetrack. You could go with a stiffer compression right front shock. That would actually be my first choice. Is go with a heavy rough type shock. Normally that would be like a 5 compression valve shock for these rough conditions. Then you find you don't have to change the actual car itself, because when you stiffen the right front spring, you're changing it. You're changing how the right rear works. You're changing corner entry, mid corner, and corner exit, where with the shock absorber, all you're doing is you're slowing that down to the point where it won't affect you much getting in. Talked to my old buddy Pat last week in Marshalltown. Talked about his new deal. Everything seems to be going pretty good, and he was all chipper, and so that was exciting. So glad everything's going well, Pat. What does moving the radius rods on a 3-link USRA car do? Moving them up, down, and forward and backward on the cage. Well, I'm not a real big believer in moving them forward and backward. I think that changes a lot of geometry. Moving them upward, now like that street stock type car that you guys build, you've got quite a few holes and you can move that stuff forward and backward, can't you, Joel? What does that actually do?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you.
I don't know what I'm struggling with, but my on if I come that conversation, I think I'm hacker with the stability. We built it
That didn't work.
really for so
I think he has a line there. Joel.
Yeah, we lost you again, Joel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Turn your volume down. Are you on a computer or on your phone, or what are you on?
A laptop.
Turn the volume down.
I can try a phone, but I'm on a laptop right now.
Turn the volume down.
Turn the volume down.
Yeah, sometimes a loud volume interferes.
Anyway, Matthew is moving them up and down. When you move like the left rear up, you're gaining angle. It's kind of like the car getting up on the bars. Statically on an IMCA type car, we'll run 25, 28 degrees on that left lower bar just to get more angle in it. And to the point where we kind of learned that a little bit off of the 4-bar stuff, that when you're all up in hike motion, where like if you clamp the right front down and you jack the car up against the chain underneath the seat, you'd find that you have about 45 degrees of angle, and that seems to work really pretty well. The right rear, I move that up, put angle in it if I need to free the car up. And if I need to tighten the car up, I actually lower it. And then one thing with the right rear, we actually raise it on the cage itself, keep the angle in it, raising it on the frame and raising it on the cage, because the timing of that thing seems to give the car more traction, but still keep the angle in it to the point where it doesn't affect the car in the middle of the corner. Okay, let's talk tire grinding do's and don'ts. Oh,
Don't make smoke.
Whatever you do, don't make smoke. That's one thing for sure. The biggest thing is, of course, always grinding in the direction that the tire is actually going to go. In other words, if you're doing a right tire, you would grind it standing in front of the tire. You would grind around in the circular motion. The left tire, you would want to stand behind the tire and grind around it so that you're not cutting off the sharp edges, and you're creating edges to go. Yep, there you go. Chad's got a diagram there.
So you
Go ahead with that, Chad.
This is so hard to show, but so as the tire feathers, right? It feathers that edge. You grind that back square Don't grind towards that feather, because you're just going to roll the feather down into the crack and not sharpen that edge. So you always want to sharpen your edge.
And the biggest thing is just don't use too much speed. Don't get too hot. I mean, if the tire's smoking, that's a definitely don't do. I'm not a big fan. Now that we can actually sipe these tires, I use that 32-degree grip. That seems to work pretty good when we don't. How are you doing now, Joel?
I'm trying again. How's it working?
Well, you're sounding good, at least for a split second. The question that we're on is we're talking about, let's talk about grinding tires, the do's and don'ts. We talked about the fact of when you grind the tire, the right side tire, you always want to stand to the outside of the tire grinding around, and the left side tire, you want to stand to the inside of the tire grinding around, so that you make the tire have some sharp edges towards the outside edge of the tire. Anything you want to add to that tire grinding?
And what customers want to ask me about that tire prep is, there's no magic there, but I always tell people, watch what the guys running up front are doing and ask them what they're doing, and as you get some experience with it, you'll find what works best for you. It's not always the same thing. I mean, guys are on other guys, cars, tires, how you grind this type of for him for his application.
Gotcha. Next question. Stefan's got a question. I have a 3,200-pound stock car with cross wedge and left all around 53.5, 54%. My rear bite is about 250 pounds on a big half mile. I struggle to get the car to turn in and through the center of the corner, and it's a tick free off. I know it may be a loaded question, but where or what changes should I be looking at making? Well, I mean, as far as your actual left side percentage and your rear percentage, doesn't sound all that bad. I think you've got a little bit too much left rear. I mean, that's quite a bit in my opinion. Biggest thing is the question you got to ask yourself, if the car is where or what change. Anyway, if the car is getting in and it's rolling on the right rear, that's creating your tightness condition getting into the corner and through the middle. So kind of it all depends on how much travel you're getting on that right rear. You're just probably getting a lot of side bite on that right rear. Your looseness off is because the car is tight from the center. It's tight on corner entry and through the center. And then what happens is the car automatically breaks traction getting off, and then you have no traction getting off whatsoever. But think about it when you're actually racing the car. If you can kind of feel, if your shoulders kind of pushing towards your back and leaning a little to the left when you're in the seat, even though you're strapped in there, kind of feel if the car feels like it's getting on the right rear, or have somebody take some pictures or video tape to see if the car is actually getting on the right rear on corner entry. If that's the case, then you could probably use a little stiffer spring over there, or a softer left front spring would work well too. Bob, question on mounting the left rear chain on the axle of an A mod with 60-inch center axle. Where does the chain mount side to side, up against the bell, or out towards the birdcage? If you move positions, what effect does it have? I'll let you take that one, Chad.
So generally, we like to be in towards the bell on the modifieds, and if you think of the rear axle as like a teeter-totter, okay, so if you put that chain way out by the tire, it's going to pick that up real easy. If you put it in here, it's going to have less effect on it. So essentially, when we move it into the bell and the right side goes up in the wheel well, it actually digs more too. So if the chain's tight out here, you're going to get less dig past the chain. If it's in by the bell, you're going to get more dig, left rear dig off the corner if the chain's moved into the bell, and it doesn't try to pick the left rear tire up so easily when it's slid into the bell. So always want to go tight to the bell.
Next question is 3-link B-mod. Do you prefer to keep trailing arms same length or run a left rear shorter to get more rear steer, or keep the same length but run more angle to towed in? I have a 15-inch and a 16-inch, 15-inch left rear and a 16-inch right rear with 3 inches of steer at hike from static. Well, that's not too bad. The biggest thing you're going to find with your left rear, yeah, steer is part of it, but when you get into the corner and the car tractions up, when you get on the throttle, that left rear is going to traction the car up quicker in the middle of the corner, which sometimes can create a throttle tight situation. I've kind of always went the opposite with a longer left rear. That way I can run more angle in it, and it doesn't seem to be as sensitive in the middle of the corner. And I feel the longer one actually tractions the car up better up off the corner. That's just from my experiences. Not saying that this wouldn't work. I know some guys have done that. Kind of depends on the tire you're running. And if you're on short racetracks, that 15-inch probably is a pretty good idea. If you're on something that's 3/8 or bigger, you might, try a longer left rear to see. But maybe you're not having that mid-corner problem. If you're not having that mid-corner problem, I would leave it alone. 3 inches of steer from static is a fair amount. That definitely should get the car free through the middle, I would think. Trace, when a car is tight in the middle of the corner, where would you adjust first? Well, there's two questions. If it's tight in the middle of the corner, is it tight on the throttle, or is it a side bite deal? If the car's tight in the middle because it's rolled on the right rear and you've got quite a bit of side bite, then more than likely that might be a Panhard bar adjustment. Raising the Panhard bar on the rear end might be the answer. If it's tight on the throttle, then you need to actually raise the right trailing arm, giving it so that it's got more steer on that right rear, so that right rear moves backwards a little bit better. It helps rotate the corner a little better. I'm not a big believer in taking traction away from the left rear. I'd rather add traction to the right rear and putting some angle or more stagger. One of those two things would be my go-to there. Brandon, the legend Joel Smith, Brandon Blocklanger.
There's a guy we need to get back to the track.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. He's just living the dream, family man, enjoying everything. You gotta miss this racing thing, though. Don't care how you do it. You gotta miss it.
Oh, I think he does.
Lester's got a question. What amount of the spring split typically works best on the front end of a USRA B-mod? Running 550s even now, but pushing on corner entry and really bad in the center while braking. Well, I don't actually think I can tell you to soften up that left front would make the car probably a little bit better on corner entry, but I don't. What's actually causing the problem on corner entry is the right rear sticking too hard. I still would possibly raise the panhard bar, put more angle in that right rear trailing arm to get the car to roll a little bit better. Softening the spring is definitely the answer. I'm just not, sometimes the problem with that is now all of a sudden we can get a tightness in the middle of the corner because that 550 is keeping that left rear hooked a little bit more. But as a rule of thumb, once again, under braking, if it's really bad under braking, that's a situation where I'm not so sure you don't have a brake situation that's going on. And that would tell me if it's under braking conditions and it's worse, that's telling me that the right rear of the car is sticking too hard. You need to put some traction in that right rear. What's you guys' opinion?
Pretty spot on.
Okay, next one. Joel, can you talk about what's needed to order your upper control arms, primarily for the racer that buys a used car with close uppers on it if they want spares?
Just give us a call at 814-50. Myself or all my sales guys can turn the part what you're looking for. There's a lot of options, a lot of areas there, but we do this stuff today with just a little bit of for what you're looking for. So yeah, I encourage you to give us one and take care you're looking for.
That didn't come across really great as far as your internet or we're still having some problems there, Joel. Biggest thing what I would do, Jason, is I'd give Joel a call tomorrow morning, and he can, at Close Racing Supply, and he can kind of give you an idea, because you're probably going to need some measurements, or he can, if you tell him what brand of car you've got, he can tell you what you need.
Hey, since we're talking to Jason Civils, let's talk about his creation.
Awesome.
So this is our new product release for the night here. This is our Jason Civils inspired sipe setter. So this thing fits right on your Van Alstyne sipe head. And one of the cool things about it is you can set your blades at an angle. So angle siping is kind of a new trend where you can have your first block deeper and then go shallower as the block goes on to give your trailing block some strength. So this guy here is engraved every 16th of an inch, if you can see that. So you just loosen the knob up, set it to whatever depth you want. If you want to be flat or if you want to be on an angle, put the deeper on one side than the other side. And then if you don't have a Van Alstyne or you have an old school sipe head, you just take this little block out, spin him around, and then you can set your grooving blades from the other direction if you want to use this tool for that. So it's kind of a dual purpose. We designed it for the Van Alstyne, and then we went to the track, and the guys were like, well, I can use the other side to do my groovers. So kind of a dual purpose setter tool for setting your depths on your sipers and your groovers. So just a really cool trick little piece that Jason brought to us to make for the racers, and real nice and clean, affordable, $40. They should be on the shelf at Close and BHE soon, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
Now that we know about it, we will get some of them coming. Okay. Bob wants, can you talk about running the left rear chain on a street stock car type of car? I've heard people having success with one on a dry slick racetrack. Well, the thing is with that, Bob, is anytime you can limit, in my opinion, you limit a little bit of movement on that left rear, it takes steer out of the car. And sometimes if you get too much steer, you get too much hike on the left rear. What's happening is then all of a sudden the car gets so much steer that it steers the car loose. So a lot of times people on dry slick racetracks will actually shorten that chain a little bit to try to take some of that steer out of it. You still have the load in your spring. Everything else is the same. The only thing of it is you're not gaining any additional trailing arm angle. So trailing arm angle is actually what gives you traction. So sometimes it's kind of a catch-22. That's one of those deals, Bob. You just need to try it and see what you think. If you can go with more angle on the trailing arm, I think that's a plus. Okay, Tyler's got Jet by BHE or GRT by BHE. What do you prefer? Well, we've only done, the only car that we did as far as Johnny's cars, the Jet car, was the one that we did for Cade Richards. Cade's a kid that, man, we've been helping him since he's almost since he started racing, and he bought a Jet car. Wanted to know if we could put our front end on the car, and Johnny was okay with it. So we did it to kind of help Cade out. We're just kind of waiting to see what goes on. Johnny's cars are good race cars, and I'm not saying that we would need to put our front end on Johnny's cars. I mean, his stuff's going very well. So, as far as the two cars go, we've built a lot of GRTs, but like I said, that's kind of what what we've actually promoted the most. And once again, nothing wrong with Johnny's stuff. Johnny's stuff's good stuff the way it is. All right, next question. Chad, you should make something to measure from the mid plate to the rear end to measure squareness, or to see where you're at using plumb bob suck.
Well, that's what I just went and grabbed. I grabbed a WM 448. Dan Long came to me a couple years ago to make a tool that goes on the axle that snaps on there, and then it gives you the center line notch. So that snaps on the rear end, and then when you get the level, then you have a notch for center line and edge of the tube, both directions. So you can have it vertical. So you can do ground up to the center, ground up to the edge, front to back. So this is just a quick little tool that snaps over the axle tube to let you know where center is. So you don't have to use the plumb bob hanging over the edge. WM 448.
Awesome. Bryce, wait a minute, sorry, I missed one. Ryan, how far out are you from ordering a new stock car chassis? I can't completely answer that question 100% with accuracy. I'm going to say 45 days, probably is what I'm guessing, 30 to 45 days. I know we have one on order that is not sold, and I think we're supposed to get that car here the end of this week or the first part of next week sometime. It's a car that we want to kind of take a little bit of extra time with and go through some things and kind of make some adjustments to it, just so that it's a little bit more, has more BHE trickery to it. So I'm going to borrow your phrase there, Chad. A little bit more trickery to it. Nothing against the B&B cars the way they are. They all work very well. We're just wanting to give our customers a couple different takes on some things. So you'd be best, Ryan, to give Bobby a call tomorrow on that, and he can kind of give you a little better idea. He's kind of our stock car guy, and when it comes to some of that stuff, I keep up with the details on the actual car itself, but I don't necessarily keep up with the other details so much. Hey guys, thanks again. My question today is a 4-link toe. With the car at attitude, should the right side links be pointed straight forward and the left side be towed towards the right front? If so, what angles should you recommend? Go ahead, Chad.
So the left, as you're sitting there statically at ride height, you want the left sides to be fairly straight forward. The left rear gets a lot of motion, so then we're going to go through a big transition. So you want to always double check your bars statically and then attitude. And when I say attitude, left rear down, right rear up in the wheel well. The right side bars, the right bottom rod, basically the car teeters over the right bottom rod. So that's the bar that has the least movement. So we basically start that one pretty straight. The right top rod needs to be pointed to the left front tire, probably about an inch, I would say, Bob, right?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
An inch is probably a good starting point. And that's often overlooked. I had a customer in Vegas a few years back that couldn't figure his car out, and he was just struggling, and nothing he did seemed to help the car. So I went over there and kind of did a look over on it, and one of the first things I noticed was his bar toe. His right top rod was pointing out at ride height. Well, when it's pointed out at ride height and it rolls over and it points to the door, and attitude like that, when you pick up the fuel, the motion goes through them rods, and basically with the right top rod pointed to the door, the car was always tight. And what it turned out to be was he just had his frame spacers switched from what the car builder had recommended. So it was about I think it was about a 2 or 2.5, 3 inch swing on that top rod once he flipped them spacers around, and it was like night and day handling. So bar toe is often overlooked and always should be addressed and make sure that you got it right.
Okay.
I need to make a drawing for that, Bob.
What'd you say?
I need to make a bar toe drawing.
You do. I agree. You need to put your main man on that project.
See if Billy's got some time.
Yeah, there you go. Well, tell him, there's certain things that are important. GRT IMCA modified on 3/8 mile racetrack. Picks up a bad throttle push in the middle of the corner. I think it may be on the right rear too hard, not enough right front. Where should I start? First thing I would do is put a 1/2 inch wheel spacer. Well, if you're running a 3-inch off right rear, I'd put a 1/2 inch wheel spacer on there. I think that probably is going to help a fair amount. Next thing you could do, because you're right, I mean, that's a common occurrence. GRT cars get on the right rear pretty hard. Raising that panhard bar up on the rear end would be another good idea, because they, like I said, it's common for them to roll on the right rear pretty hard. But that wheel spacer, raising the panhard bar up, if that doesn't quite cure it, always raise your right lower arm on the frame. That's definitely going to help. That would be my last thing to do, unless you're running a downhill angle on that right lower, then raise it so that it's actually level, so that when it does roll, it doesn't gain so much downhill angle. Bobby McKenzie's watching. Matthew, right rear spring on top of the rear end versus on a slider on a USRA B mod. Well, when you put the spring on top of the housing, what that does is basically just transfers the load from the rear, from the frame to the rear end. It doesn't have anything to do with any rear end movement, as far as any pinion movement whatsoever. Slider, in my opinion, a slider on the right rear in front of the housing is going to drive a little better. It's going to be a little more tunable, but if you're on running some real rough racetracks and stuff, that spring on top of the housing is pretty hard to beat, because it has no effect when your pinion angle comes up and the throttle comes up and you get steering the car and it's changing your pinion angle. It's not changing the actual spring angle. Your spring is just up there on top of the housing. Dan, is a 6 1/4 rake too much on that left rear J-bar with at the pinion and 1 inch above the drive shaft? No, actually not. I think you're in good shape there. That's 6 1/4 inches is exactly where I would sit it. Alex, I took the stock car hobby class last and got our first win on Friday. Well, way to go, Alex. Make sure you email us tomorrow so that we can put you on the winners list. That's pretty awesome, and let us know where you ran, where you won at. That's pretty cool. Congratulations. My question is, I raced a 3,100-pound pure stock rear suspension on American Racer tires. The right rear is rolling under too far, and after 2 races, the tread on the right rear starts to separate the sidewall where it's glued. Separate the sidewall where it's glued together. I'm at 14 pounds of air pressure and still rolling it under. Man, with that heavy of a race car, you really, that right rear needs to be in that 16 range. I'd keep putting air in it until it, that's 14 pounds is I wouldn't run 14 pounds on a 2,400 pound modified car, to be honest with you. That's pretty light. Will adding more pounds of pressure, like the 16, make the big difference to solve that, or should I lower the weight to stop the rollover of the car? Well, let's try the 16 pounds of air pressure first before you lower the weight, because first of all, I'd hate to see you change a lot of stuff, because if you won, that's a pretty good indication you were going pretty good. But let's try the air pressure first, and if that doesn't solve it, you probably will have to do something about that.
Me now?
I can hear you now.
Wow, maybe I fixed it. Took me 50 minutes into the show to get it fixed, but maybe I'm on the right track now.
That's way better.
The picture's a lot better, and your sound is really good.
Perfect.
Plug in?
So what did you do to fix it?
Well, I shut off my laptop and got on my phone and figured out how to do it there, but it seems to be working all right. I apologize for that.
No problem.
Signal
We have suffered through our share of technical difficulties in this show. This would not be the very first one, by all means.
Back up to that A-frame.
My computers made it through all night without any glitches, so what the heck? Don't feel bad, Joel. Not a problem. Kevin, is there a disadvantage of picking up the left front? Chassis manufacturers made suggestions to tighten the right rear chain a little bit, which corrected the left front, but the car seems to turn better with the left front in the air. Should I allow the left front to come up more, or allow the left front to come up more, or make other adjustments to coincide with tightening the right rear chain? Well, I'm not just a super duper fan of tightening that right rear chain. I'm not saying it doesn't produce traction, because it does produce traction. But I don't understand why the car, you would think with the left front on the ground, the car would actually turn in better. So I'm not really sure. You guys have an opinion?
Yeah, you would think.
I mean, the old adage used to be 4 tires should be better than 3, but.
Yeah, I would be careful with the right rear chain for sure.
Yeah, that definitely gets you up off the corner a little better, but if it's a little bit rough or choppy, you won't like it. Okay. Junior, got a 16 GRT IMCA modified. What do you recommend for panhard bar split? On a GRT, I actually try to run the panhard bar about 1 inch above the center of the rear end, the center of the pinion on the rear end. and then a 6-inch rake. Now, you can adjust the rake depending on if you need more left or traction. The problem is sometimes you can gain a little traction by putting more rake in it, but then you can lose traction off the corner. It might help it in the middle, but sometimes it can hurt the car off the corner. What's your experience, Joel, with that rake and the panhard bar?
Well, once again, me dealing with more UMP stuff and less IMCA stuff, I think that makes a difference. But centerline the pinion a little bit above, and 6.5 inches of rakes, I think is pretty common. Adjust accordingly from there.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty much what I've found.
Since we got Joel, you want him to talk about them A-frames?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about those A-frames. Tell us that story again that we lost you on.
Okay. If I remember correctly, I think Jason was asking me what the best way for guys to order A-frames that maybe had bought some used cars that had CRS uppers on it. We just encourage people to give us a call at the shop. You can talk to myself or a couple of my sales guys, and we can decipher what you need. Whether we look up a previous sale to another customer that maybe owned that car, we usually can decipher it. There's actually a lot of options and lengths and different things like that, but we do stuff every day, so we're accustomed to figuring out what people need. And then last resort, we have people send us pictures, that we could figure out from. So we're always able to take care of the customer on upper A-frame stuff. So we just encourage them to give us a call.
Now, and your upper A-frames use your ball joint.
Yes. It's a small diameter ball joint that we had manufactured years ago. It actually started with Brian Ruhlman out of Michigan and his brother Chad Ruhlman. Chad, good friends of mine, local to us, the Ruhlmans are, and so it was a collaboration with all these guys that had made that ball joint. And I want to say we're going on 11 or 12 years we've been using that ball joint, and we've had a lot of success with it. And obviously the reason for that is to give the right front more shock clearance, run more negative camber, and not worry about beating that shock up. And it's definitely done that, and we've it's exceeded our expectation as far as the strength and durability, and it's just gotten very popular for us throughout the years.
This is show and tell. You can go grab one and show it. You're in the showroom. I go all the time and grab it. I've done it.
All right. I can do that. Hold tight.
All right. Kyle, what's the pros and cons of spacing the left front in or out on a stock car? Well, anytime when you spacer it in, the car is going to want to turn down in a little better. However, a lot of times spacering it out actually makes the front end of the car wider, which makes the car a little bit more stable. But as a rule of thumb, if you spacered that in, it's going to make that wheel is going to gain weight, and that's going to make the car turn down in the middle of the corner a little bit better. Go ahead, Joel.
All right. So our small ball joint deal kind of looks like this right here, if you could see it. We got a few different lengths. This, I think, is a standard length. They come in a +1/2, a +1, a +1.5. I brought, our ball joint holder that has a clevis tab and a 5/8 threaded stud on it, which is one of our options. But the pin just kind of drops down in there like that. We have these caps available in aluminum or steel. I believe the IMCA guys have to run a steel cap, and that cap just screws down on in there. Set the load on that thing, and then there's a couple set screws that kind of tighten that cap up. So it's pretty easy to use, easy to replace the pin, and once again pretty durable, and helps to gain that extra shock clearance on that right front. I know Bob uses it on a lot of his cars, that particular ball joint holder that I was showing. And then we build that same configuration in all kinds of different uppers, adjustable style. We use some of Chad's adjusters on the end that go in the end of the A-frame, that the rod end goes in 3/4 to half deal. So lots of variations, lots of options, but they all use that same style pin.
Awesome. Good information. Okay, what would the benefit of lowering the left front shock mount on a B-mod be? Well, I actually don't see the benefit would be is you would get more roll to the right rear. However, when you get more roll to the right rear, you take load off the left rear. So what we've actually done in the past is we've actually raised the shock mount on the frame to the point where we can select it to the point where it can only get to the right rear so far when it bottoms out the shaft of the shock absorber. So the trend has actually been to go the opposite way. We're running out on time here, so I'm hoping we get to all the rest of them. Hypothetically, if you had 4 offsets on a Northern Sport Mod and went to 3 offsets, what would the car do on all 4 corners to change the same? If you went from 4s to 3s, you're going to find that the car is actually just going to be more stable. It's not going to roll as much in the middle of the corner. Going to a 3 on the right rear is going to free that car up a little bit more. You're going to probably want to put a little more panhard bar in it. You're going to want to do some things to tighten it up. But by moving the right front out, you're kind of counteracting what it's going to do to the right front, because the right front's going to resist a little of that roll. I would think the car would be very neutral and wouldn't probably change a tremendous amount. It's just going to be more stable. Jacob, thanks again, Chad, for making the load length stick. If anybody is wondering, it's worth the extra money indefinitely.
Well, thanks, Jacob. Definitely a cool tool. You missed the master cylinder one.
I did.
Master cylinders, what ones for the front and for the rear?
1 inch to the front and 1 inch to the rear. Okay. All right, this next one, Adriel has got revisit rear bar toe on a 3-link car, modified, and how it affects it. Should the right rear be pointed towards the left front? If so, what angle? Well, as a rule of thumb, the way we build our cars is we take the left rear and it's angled. I can't give you the actual degree of angles because I don't know. But in inches wise, on a 16-inch bar, the left rear is angled towards the right front 2 inches. So if you drew a string line down the car, the right front or the left rear is pointed towards the right front 2 inches. The right rear is pointed towards the left front 1 inch. And that's what we've worked out. I mean, that's what we've used pretty regularly here for years. And that's worked out pretty well. Dan, USRA B mods, quick change rear end. What hole would you run the right front trailing arm on the bracket of the left rear on the housing?
Right rear car, 2-link car, I'd start in the middle, 4.5 down.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that sounds like a good idea. Bryce says we need to have you back, Joel. So we'll have to do that again. Have you back.
I don't know if I could take striking out again.
Next time we'll know to use your cell phone.
There you go.
You're so far from humanity there, you can't get internet out there.
There you go. You're probably right.
Oh, man.
That hurt, by the way.
I was trying to figure out, I don't think my cell phone worked in your building, so it's amazing that your cell phone works.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll work on that for next time, for sure.
Logan, How much left or chain drop do you recommend on a USRAB mod? 4.5 inches. That seems to work pretty good. Joel at CRS is an awesome guy and to deal with, and I love giving him my money. Rick Holson.
Oh yeah, Rick. Thanks a lot, Rick. Appreciate it. Appreciate your business.
Okay. Run CSR. Keaton Atkinson says, run CSR uppers on my car and have only bent one in 3 years. Great job. Well, Keaton must not hit much stuff. That's pretty good. He's a heck of a driver. Earl, yours needs to be towed to the left front like 4 inches and the right rear LOL.
I was trying to find Bob said we missed a question. I can't find it, but it said we missed a question from Austin. I'm not sure where it is. I couldn't find it going back, but.
Yeah, he said, missed a question. Getting the heat race, losing the feature. I was going to ask the same question. If I missed the answer, I'll go back and rewatch it. Well, I'm sorry, I can't find that question that Austin asked. At the beginning of the night, the car is the heat race, but loosen the feature. Well, the problem is, of course, heat races have a tendency to be grippy. So, you're going to have to do, well, there's just quite a few things that you could actually do. I'm not really sure what to actually tell you for sure to go to. I know like an IMCA car, we lengthen the left side wheelbase 1/4 of an inch for feature time to keep the car so that it comes up off the corner a little straighter. Take a little static steer out of it. That seems to work really well. Other things you could do. What's your suggestion, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell somebody to first of all check with their chassis builder what his recommendations are, because there's obviously many things to do, and they're going to point you in the right direction with the type of car you have. But yeah, taking some static steer out, that's always a really good tuning tool. Even wheel spacers, slide on 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch wheel spacers are a good tuning tool for these lower division cars between heat and feature. Many other items, but there's a couple small items that help.
Chad, Jonathan's got a question on biscuits. How long they last in the pull bar, and when should you service them? Well, the thing is Jonathan, we need to know. He's got a Rage car, so you should probably have an idea.
Yeah, it's probably a small puck bar. The small puck ones in the can, generally 20 nights. They need to be probably thrown away and put a fresh set in. Our bigger biscuit on an IMCA crate motor, that thing will last. We got some guys over 60 nights on that one. The big biscuit on an open tire car, the open motor, big blade, sticky tires, that stuff hurts the pull bar biscuits. If you're IMCA 604 crate racing, you're going to get more longevity out of it. So it's kind of based on how much material, how much puck material you have, and how big a horsepower you got, how sticky the tire, and how much grip you got. That depends on how hard you are on those biscuits. More material lasts longer. So our big puck biscuit lasts a lot longer than the small pucks.
Logan wants to know where you measure the chain drop. Measure your distance from the axle. Well, if you have an over rail car, measure your distance from the top of the axle housing to the bottom of the frame, and then jack it up so that there's an additional 4 to 4.5 inches of chain of more clearance there, and then hook your chain there. In fact, I'd probably go 4. Because like say if your measurement is, we'll give you an example, if your measurement is 13 inches, raise it up to a 17 inches and then hook your chain up there. You're going to have to help me out with this next one, Joel. What rear brake pads do you recommend for a sport mod? What we run is the AFCO really aggressive ones. I think the part number ends in 34. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the 34 pad, AFCO pad, is the pretty aggressive one that you'd want to run on the rear for sure.
That's the one that we sell that one quite a bit, and then Willwood's fairly aggressive pad. What's that one? These guys are asking me to be a parts guy. Hell,
Yeah.
I don't parts. That's why I got parts guys for.
Yeah, I know that BP40 Willwood pad's a pretty.
Yeah, that's it. That's the number I've heard.
Yeah, BP40 is pretty popular pad in the Willwood for sure.
Yeah, that's the two we sell. Sorry, guys, I don't actually get the privilege of talking on the phone to you guys a whole lot anymore. I've got guys that do such a better job at it than me that I let them do their work and I don't mess with them. Between Austin and Bobby, they take care of, and Rocky, they take care of pretty much all the sales calls. Okay. All right, we're going to do 2 more questions. Austin, is it good? It was good in the good intact. Moved right side down for the slick and isn't near enough. What other adjustments? Once again, Austin, I'd recommend lengthening the left side wheelbase. Closing the stagger up a little bit. That would probably be my 2 first things I would go to. Bob, his question was, oh yeah, well, we got you, Bob. Thank you very much. Adriel, Bob, was the left rear, right rear bar angle measurement from the ride heights? What was Adriel's question?
I think it was static angles.
Yeah, that would be at ride height, correct. Basically, like if you look at the back of the car, you go forward and in 2 inches. If you look at the back of the right side, yeah, he was talking about toe. All right, guys. Well, I apologize. Sorry, Joel, we didn't get you enough time on here, but we will definitely have you back. And it's been a great group of questions again tonight. Anything else you got, Chad?
Not really. Just everybody have a good week. Good luck this weekend. Joel, good to see you again.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate it. And you guys have a good week. And like I said, that Stucker guy, make sure you send us an email tomorrow so we know where you won. And definitely sounds good. All right. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.